like a rule for everyone to remember is just make sure you remember to keep your mics turned off uh, if and unless you are supposed to be speaking, right? Till the time you're not recognized, please make sure that your mics are off, just so that uh, do not have any sort of disruption in the committee, unnecessary disruption per se. Uh, so yeah, that's that. If in case anyone has any queries to begin with, any doubts, any problems, any issues with how to be using this app or anything of that sort, so I'll take this one step at a time. I'll try to clear every one of your doubts. If in case you all want to ask regarding that, you all can raise your hands and I'll clarify that. If not, we'll move ahead with the introduction of the committee and a little brief before we move forward. 3 days, you all can ask any of us. Uh, Besides the introduction, let's just make sure that all of you, I just hope I'm audible to everyone. If in case at any point in time you all have any uh, issues with regards to hearing or anything of that sort, you all can simply raise your hands. I hope everyone is aware how to raise their hand. That would really help us know. So that's pretty much that. Uh, I hope you all have read about the committee, World Health Assembly, and the background guide, everything regards to the agenda. We'll jump into the rules and procedure in a moment. I did uh, understand and see that a lot of you had a lot of queries in the WhatsApp group. Apologies on my behalf that I haven't been able to be active in that group per se. I'm not so active on WhatsApp, and hence that issues there. But I'll try to make sure that I provide you with an alternative in case you all have doubts or queries in first place. So I'll take care of that. Besides that, uh, if there are any queries, any questions as such, anything right now that you all want to ask, I know you all are very eager with regards to the position paper. I've heard you all. Like, I'll clarify what a position paper is and I'll also clarify when and where you can submit it. Uh, so that's there, not a problem. Besides that, anything else with regards to the committee, anything that you're not clear with, anything at all, you all can just ask us. Just to make sure I'm doing this multiple times, just to make sure that we are all here on the same page. And once we move forward, that everyone is aware of what they're supposed to do. And hence I'm asking. So since we have time at hand, let's just make sure everyone is there. So in case anyone has any questions, any doubts, any queries, you all can ask us.
So just one question. Will this session commence with the training session and the next session will be the GSL, roll call modes and everything?
Yes. So essentially, this session isn't allotted specifically for the training session. There is, at least not that I have been told so. But if in case there are queries, if in case there are doubts that delegates are not aware about, so we will clarify doubts and questions. All right. So once everyone is clear with how the committee is going to proceed, is when we will proceed with the committee. So that's pretty much that.
Excuse me, sir. So
Yes.
after this session only we'll get to know about the substantive chits and all. Right now it's
Uh,
just an
no. So
explanatory.
essentially, what I'm gonna try and do is that's what I have in mind is to at least clear all the rules and procedures, how we're going to proceed in the committee in this session itself, and make sure we start with at least the GSL in this session. I can't again guarantee that that would happen, but that's essentially the aim.
So it's just we're on a crossroads regarding substantive chits and all, right? So we don't know for
Yes,
sure.
definitely.
Oh,
We'll get
thank
into everything. We'll discuss every aspect, and then we'll move forward.
thank you.
All right, delegates. since you all have been asking about position papers, and since you all, some of you will have to make it anyway, so I'll just clarify that in the first hand, in the first place. So essentially, okay, just another few things before we move forward. I have clarified everyone with regards to my stand on keeping your mics turned off. All right. If in case you have questions like these that you have been asking right away, please try to raise your hands rather than uh, you know uh, asking directly. So once you raise your hands, we'll recognize you. Once we recognize you is when you ask your question or speak or whatever it is. So that's how it's supposed to be in any normal conference, that you raise your hands, you get recognized, and then you speak your turn or whatever it is. So that's pretty much that. uh, with regards to the camera, the organizing committee has suggested me and asked you time and again to keep it on for everyone. uh, for me as a chairperson, it's not mandatory for me, but I'll just tell you all right away clearly that while you're speaking, it gives me an additional dimension to mark you upon. So I get to see whether you're reading from a scripted speech, or is it like you're speaking top of the head, or whatever it is. So again, it just gives me an extra dimension, is all. It's not mandatory for me to see you, but if you're comfortable with it, it would definitely help, is what I'm saying. That's pretty much that with regards to your cameras. But again, the OC has suggested for all of you to keep your cameras on. So in case that's possible, that'd be great. Uh, that's with regards to the usage of this platform. Delegates, most of the times, the vice chairperson Nitya would be moderating the committee. I will be there in the committee present with you all. I will be marking you from behind the screen. So if in case you have any doubts per se, if you want to ask any points of let's say parliamentary inquiry or point of inquiry, or you have any questions, any doubts or queries, you all can drop those questions in the chat box, and one of us of the executive boards will be there to handle your doubts and queries. All right. But if in case on multiple times you have been asking us and we haven't been able to clarify that, so definitely you can go ahead and raise your hands and ask the questions as the procedure suggests. So that's pretty much that with regards to commencement. Again, one more thing, it's just one more thing that you all have to keep in mind is that uh, while a speaker is speaking, irrespective of who is speaking, while they're speaking, you're not supposed to disrupt any speaker no matter what, until and unless they're not audible to you. Until and unless there is a connectivity issue, they're not audible to you, or something of that sort, they're going too fast or something of that sort. That's the only time you can raise a point of personal privilege, and we'll pause them and accordingly see what seems fit. Either they'll restart or else they'll pause and continue slowly, or whatever the issue is. But other than that, there is no such provision where you can intervene while a speaker is speaking. So just make sure you do not disrupt a speaker, and the rest is okay. So that's pretty much it. That's something they have to keep in mind. With regards to the committee moving forward, at this point in time, just in case anyone has any doubts or queries, I'll keep checking in between. So if in case anyone has any doubts or queries, can ask me and raise their hands is the best way. I'll recognize you all, or Nitya will recognize you all, and you can go ahead and ask your question. Meanwhile, otherwise as well, if you all have any doubts and queries that you'd like to ask us, you can again drop us in the chat box, and hopefully Nitya and Aaron will be able to take it up. Uh, so that's pretty much that with regards to how the committee will be proceeding. Delegates, now coming back to the position paper. So essentially, if in case, oh, all right, can all of you just raise your hands, whoever is a first timer here or a beginner who hasn't done conferences and even conferences before this? Uh, so just that we know that uh, we'll proceed accordingly in the committee as well. All right. All right, cool delegates. I see quite a lot of hands here. So I'm assuming quite a lot of you are first timers or beginners. So I'll just explain every bit on part of it as we go forward. Again, please do not hesitate at any point in time for asking questions. It's completely all right. If you want have doubts, it's all cool. With regards to position paper, all right, I'll just begin with that at first hand. Position paper essentially explains the stance of your country or your portfolio, whatever you might want to call it, also known as state sometimes. So, a position paper essentially gives the stance of your state, and will just let us. It just tells us what your country or your state feels about the particular agenda or the issue that we're going to talk about. That's pretty much it. Position paper as such does not have a fixed format. By if you go for Google, if you Google it once, the format of a position paper, you'll get various formats. You can follow any one of that. It's not a problem to me. The main crux of the thing is that it's supposed to convey to me what your stance is. So you can have preambulatory clauses. You can have, let's say, an introduction to the topic. You can have a conclusion to the topic. But if it does not have the crux, that's the position of your country for that problem, it doesn't really serve its purpose. So as long as it has that in the center, it's all cool to me. Whatever you want to add or not add, it's completely cool. The best way to present a position paper, to me at least, is to be precise and concise in every sense. Give it point wise if possible. A long paragraph is okay as well, but beyond that, multiple pages does not serve its purpose. So make sure you're to the point. If you're sending a position paper in general will have marking where you're supposed to send it. So for all purposes, all documentation related purposes, if you want to send in a document of any sorts, we'll explain all documents as we move forward. uh, you're supposed to send it to my email ID. I'll drop in my email ID in the chat box in just a minute, and CC it to the vice chairperson and the rapporteur as well. So make sure you send those while you're sending it to me, the others to receive it as well, or whoever you're sending it to, the other two should receive it as well. That's pretty much it. However, if you want to send it individually, that's cool with me. If you want to send it and CC it or just attach the other email IDs, that cool with me. Either way, the point is that everyone should receive it. So I'll drop in my email ID in another minute, along with Nitya's and Aryan's email ID, and you all can send it there. So that's pretty much that.
What do you need to send?
A position paper. In case if you want to send a position paper,
What is a position paper?
a delegate. Okay, I'll just explain it again. Like we explained earlier, a position paper is nothing but gives the stance of your country on the respected agenda. That's pretty much it. Uh, so again, it will be marked. It's not mandatory in nature, but if you send it, it will be marked upon. That's pretty simple. Uh, I'll drop in my email ID. Nitya, are you here in the committee?
Yes, sir.
Uh, if it's possible for you, can you just go over the rules and procedures real quick, the UNA USA? Meanwhile, I'll just
Sure,
take
sure,
care
no
of.
issues.
Sure,
Perfect.
sorted.
Hi, delegates. First of all, am I audible
Yes.
and clear enough to everyone? Cool. So while I'm speaking, I'll just turn off my video so that my bandwidth doesn't go away. Anyway, so we'll be following the basic UNA USA procedures. Now I can see quite a few hands that a lot of you are first timers, so I'll try to be as elaborative as possible. However, if at any point if you have any query, you can just raise your hand and I'll recognize you, and then you can ask your query. So for now, I request everyone to please lower down their hand, all those who have their hands raised. Right. So when we'll start, first of all, we'll be taking your roll call, which is nothing but you marking your presence in the committee. Now you can mark your presence in two ways. One is by saying present, and the other is by saying present and voting. Right. So I'll tell you what is the basic difference between the two. Before I go ahead, I'll just tell you a little about the voting. There are two kinds of voting. One is the substantive voting. The other is the procedural voting. A procedural voting is when you want to do anything in the committee. You want to debate, you don't want to debate, you want to break for lunch, you want to do anything in the committee, you have to raise a motion and then you have to debate or you have to vote on it, right? So that is a procedural voting. And then when we are voting on the documentation, like the final documentation, that would be a substantive voting. Now, in case of a substantive voting, you have the option to not vote. I'll give you a simple example. Let's say it's very controversial. You are not able to decide if you are in favor of it or you're against it. In that case, you can abstain, right? However, you cannot abstain in a procedural voting. You have to vote in procedural voting either for the motion or against the motion. But in case of substantive voting, you can refrain from voting, right? So now, if you want to refrain from voting, you would choose present. However, if you're choosing present and voting, you cannot refrain. Cool. I guess that was you could understand that, right? So we'll start with the roll call. Okay, UAE, do you have a question?
I couldn't.
Yes.
We'll take Brazil
So,
followed by UAE. Yes, Director Brazil, go ahead.
The second one.
See, I'll tell you. If you're taking present, you can abstain from voting, right? But if you're taking present and voting, you cannot abstain. The two types of voting. Okay. So the first is the procedural voting that I guess you understood. Second is the substantive voting, that is when the towards the end of the committee, to conclude the committee, we would be formulating a final documentation. What would be the documentation? We'll tell you that later on. But when we are voting on that final documentation, that is the substantive voting. Perfect.
Okay.
Yes. UAE, go ahead.
so my question was that what's the difference between the saying present and voting and the other two measures of voting?
Right. So see, you choose present or you choose present in voting, it would have no effect on your procedural voting because everybody has to vote in a procedural vote, right? But at the time of substantive voting, if you wish to refrain from voting, if you do not wish to vote, that can only be done if you have chosen present. Cool. So we'll just move ahead. After the roll call, we would be looking for points and motions. Now I'll be talking about the points. There are 4 points that we would be following. Number one is the point of person privilege. Now, essentially, in an on ground conference, point of person privilege can be used if you're facing any sort of a physical discomfort. You're feeling that it's getting too cold, you want the AC to be turned off, you're feeling hot, you want it to be turned on, any sort of those things. However, since we are using an online mode here, the only time where you can raise a point of personal privilege is when you're facing some sort of network issues, you're not able to hear a delegate, you want a repetition, a clarification, anything of that sort. That's when you can use a point of personal privilege. Cool. Second, yes, UA.
How do we like announce that we want to raise a point of personal privilege?
So see, essentially we'll be asking you, are there any points on the floor, delegates? That's when you can raise your hand. We'll recognize you and you can raise your point. However, a point of personal privilege is something that you can use raise at any point in time, right? So even if we are in the middle of something, we expect you to not do that when somebody is speaking. But if you really have to, then you can just unmute yourself and say that you have a point of personal privilege. Cool. Moving forward, the second point that comes in is a point of information. Now, when we are having our general speakers list, I'll come to what is GSL in another minute. But when we're having the general speakers list, sometimes delegates are left with a few time of their speeches, right? Let's say the speaker's time is 90 seconds and they've spoken for about 70 seconds. They have 20 seconds left on the clock. So in that case, they can wish to yield it to points of information, which is nothing but questions that the other delegates can ask them on their speech. Yes, delegate of Iceland.
Oh, just a question. Is it like
Yes.
necessary to yield your time to the chair or other delegates?
No. So I'll be coming to yields. So I'll come to yields and how you can yields. You have three options. I'll come to that when I'm explaining the GSL. Perfect.
Okay.
Right. So these were the 2 points: point of person privilege, point of information. Now coming to the third point, which is a point of parliamentary inquiry. Now, a point of parliamentary inquiry is used when you have any sort of questions with regards to the procedure of the committee. For example, you want to ask us by when would the moderated caucus end, or by when will we break for lunch, or what would we do after this. Anything related to the procedures, that's when you raise a point of parliamentary inquiry. Very simple. Perfect. Yes, Delegate of Iceland, you have a question.
No, I don't.
All right, you can lower down your hand then. Brazil, do you have a question? Okay. Delegate of United States of America.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, my question is regarding the position paper. When is the deadline? I mean, do we have a time or we can
Uh,
submit it like
right.
anytime?
So I guess you can send it before the end of the first session. Am I right, Arthur sir? That is the deadline, right?
Uh, Since you're not beginning with the committee in the first session, you all can send it before 5:30, like the before the end of the second session today itself.
Before 5:30, right?
Yep.
Oh, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, Brazil.
What people, what thing are they talking about?
Could you come again? I didn't understand your question.
What thing did this the delegate who just spoke? What thing did the delegate just spoke about?
She was just asking about the position, the deadline of the submitting the position paper.
Uh, okay. So I just had another question. Like, what are we supposed to write in the position paper?
I
All
can
right.
help you out a little bit. So basically, as Atif sir said, a position paper which basically comprise of your countries or states stance upon the agenda. So there can be an introduction and a conclusion. So like, basically, the crux of it will be the your entire stance, your country's stance on the agenda. It's just that, and it's not mandatory, so you don't have to give it.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you, Aryan. US and Brazil, if you don't have any question, you can lower down your hands. So I'll just be moving forward. Coming to the last point, which is the point of order. Now, okay. So Atif sir, do you accept point of orders for factual inaccuracies? Because like I only accept them for procedural inaccuracies.
So essentially, just okay, I'll just take this thing for a second. That by UNEOC procedure, this is for all the delegates to know, even the first timers. By UNEOC procedure, points of order are only there for procedural inaccuracies,
Yes.
but in MUN circuit, sometimes delegates or EBs do accept it for factual inaccuracies as well. Just this thing I'd leave on the committee. Nitya, you can just go ahead and explain it, what it is, if it is available for factual inaccuracies, and then the delegates can decide for among themselves by voting if they wanted for factual inaccuracies or not.
Perfect. So delegates like Atif are already clarified. If we go by the actual mandate of the UNA USA, point of order is only and only used. I'm sorry. So point of orders are only and only used when we, as the executive board, commit a procedural fallacy. Say, for example, we started with the committee and we directly moved to points and motions and we did not take a roll call. That is a procedural inaccuracy at our end. That's when you can raise a point of order on us. That is one thing. However, a lot of executive board members and committees tend to take point of orders on factual inaccuracies. Say, for example, anything that a delegate has quoted, misquoted, which is a universal fact. Let it be that, I don't know, maybe India is a dictatorship. That is a factual fallacy. We all know India is a democratic. It exercises democracies in whatever way, but it is a democracy, right? So that is when you can raise a point of order on that particular delegate. However, again, it is upon the committee to decide that you want to take point of orders on factual fallacies or not. So, in a moment, we'll just take an informal voting on that. We'll just go with whatever the committee wants, because at the end of the day, you guys have to run the committee and not us. So, that's about all the points. After the roll call, we took your points. Then we come to motions. Now, again, usually in the UNA USA, there is no such motion of establishing the agenda, but a lot of executive board members tend to take that when there is more than one agenda. But since our committee has only one agenda, I don't think we need to waste time on that. The agenda is established by default. So we would directly be moving to the motion for a general speakers list. Now, what is general speakers list? As the name itself suggests, it is a very general speech. It is something where you can talk about absolutely anything on the agenda. Not absolutely anything, of course, in relevance to the committee, in relevance to what the other delegates are quoting. However, there is no such thing in particular that we expect you to talk about. We'll listen whatever you wish to speak on the agenda. So that is a general speakers list. It is a part of the formal debate, right? Now the default time is 90 seconds, but of course it can be altered as per what the committee requires. The motion is very simple. The delegate of XYZ nation would like to raise a motion to enter into the formal debate, establish the general speakers list for individual speakers time being 90 seconds, 60 seconds, 120 seconds, whatever again the committee wants. Right. After that, we'll be voting upon the motion. If it passes, we'll be recognizing speakers for the GSL and then we'll move into the GSL, right? Now, after, okay, yeah, coming to the yields now, sometimes what happens is, like I said, people are left with time on the clock, right? If it was, say, 20 seconds and 20 seconds is left, in that case, we'll be asking them how do they wish to yield their time. Here, you can yield your time in three ways. Number one is to points of information that I already explained, where the other delegates would have a chance to ask you questions on your speech. Second is to the chair. You yield your time to us, right? It's upon our discretion. What do you want to do with it? Most probably, we'll just end it right there and we'll move to the next speaker. And third is yield your time to another delegate. You can ask another delegate to speak on in the left out time. We'll give them a chance to make their point. However, just make sure that if you are yielding your time to another delegate, they know about it. Don't very abruptly ask them to speak. If you're thinking of yielding your time to them, just inform them in prior so that they can prepare something to speak, right? So that is one thing. Apart from that, when we are done with a couple of GSL speeches, we would be again asking for points and motions. Here, we expect you to raise a motion for either a moderated caucus or an unmoderated caucus. Now, caucus is nothing but the informal debate. GSL is the formal debate. Caucus is the informal debate. What is the difference between a moderated caucus and an unmoderated caucus? A moderated caucus is nothing but the subtopic of the given agenda, right? Uh, so here in this case, you can choose a particular subtopic that you feel is important and need a separate concentration to be debated upon. That's when you can raise a moderated caucus for the same. And in case you think that the committee is not on consensus as to what topic do you wish to raise for moderate caucus, in that case, just take an unmod, which is nothing but like a group discussion where you can lobby come on come on consensus for one topic of the moderate caucus. Perfect. Iceland, do you have a question?
Point of parliamentary inquiry. I'm just a bit confused about this. Of course, it is not mandatory to like have to speak on the GSL, right? On the general speakers list.
No, of course not. Of course not. It's not mandatory, but of course, very well recommended. Right. We'll take UAE next. Do you have a question, UAE?
Could you please repeat the modulus calculus?
Moderated caucus. Okay. So it's nothing, but basically, you can debate upon a certain subtopic with regards to the agenda. Okay. Now what happens here is sometimes the agenda is very wide as a whole. However, there are certain branches to it which needs to be discussed in detail. That's when you use a moderated caucus for it. Very simple. So the motion would go like the delegate of XYZ would like to suspend the formal debate, move into a moderated caucus on the topic dash 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 for total time being 20 minutes, individual speakers time being 60 seconds. That's all.
Okay, thank
Right?
you.
So I hope a moderated caucus and non-moderate caucus is clear. Now, whenever a mod or an unmod end, we'll revert back to the GSL. We'll take a couple of GSL speeches. We'll again take points and motions, and the process would continue. I guess we'll be explaining you the documentation like on day 3 only. That's when you're supposed to do it. So apart from that, that's pretty much it for the rules of procedure. Atisha, did I miss something? I guess not.
I think you've covered everything. Delegates, at this point, if anyone has a question or anything they didn't understand, can simply just raise their hands and we'll clarify that.
I
New
guess New
Zealand,
Zealand has a question. Yeah.
It's something related to the resolution. Can I ask something related to that?
yeah, sure, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
So I have two questions. So what is the max number of sponsors for a resolution, and how many signatories for it to be presented in committee?
So, all right, essentially, delegate, we'll get down to that once we are sure about how many delegates we have present on the third day or the second day. Whenever you sit down to work on the draft resolution, if there is one. Again, a draft resolution in a World Health Assembly as such does not make sense. But again, if in case you get down to making reports or let's say a press release or anything of that sort, whatever comes down to it, we'll explain all the different kinds of documentation that are possible or available to you all. So that's up to you all, upon your discretion as delegates to decide upon whatever you want in the committee. But if it does come down to making a draft resolution, uh, it will completely depend upon how many delegates are present on that day at that time to decide how many sponsors will be there.
All right, thank you.
Perfect. Nitya, over to you. If in case there are no more doubts, you can just go ahead and start with the committee. Otherwise, just we'll just clarify the doubts right now.
Perfect. I guess USA has a question. Go ahead, Director USA.
Yeah, thank you. My questions are still about the chits and the POIs. How are they supposed to be entertained through chits, or we can
Right.
access them?
Right. So POIs, we will be taking the verbal POIs if the delegate yields their time to POIs. Apart from that, we'll be sending in the WhatsApp chits, the chits in the WhatsApp group. Aryan, so you would be taking care of the chits. So are you fine with them being on the WhatsApp group?
Yeah, so send your chits on the WhatsApp group and make sure they're formatted properly. So, for example, if you're sending a point of information, I want you to write point of information to delegate XYZ, from delegate XYZ, and then the matter of the chat, and that's it. But make sure your format is right, otherwise it'll be very difficult for me to mark it.
Yeah, my
Right,
question
and
was,
I
is there a
guess
limit to it? Is there a limit to the number of chits, or it's just an open-end button?
I'll let you know based on the amount of chits I'm getting, but I think it's very important that you manage your chits in a way that there's a balance between quality as well as quantity. So if you send me a lot of chits, but the matter isn't that great, then it's not gonna fetch you so many marks. So like I don't really think that would be a good strategy to go with. Make sure you send chits, but make sure the quality of the chits is also good.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, one second. So I am not on the WhatsApp group, so like I don't even have like on what do I have to come on. So can somebody just tell me?
is any if any of the secretariat members are here, could the delegate be added in the group? Okay. Don't worry, delegate. I'll contact somebody from the secretariat and I'll get you added. No worry. Right. Delegate of Germany, New Zealand. Go ahead.
Yeah, point of inquiry. By when do we submit the position paper?
You can send them by 5:30.
All right.
Delegate
Is
of New
position paper
Zealand.
mandatory?
A delegate, please wait for to just please wait to be recognized, right? So that we can go get the committee in a flow and there's not a ruckus created. And B, no, it's not mandatory to send a position paper. Director of Germany, go ahead. Director of Germany, do you have a question? Your hand is raised. Okay, we'll take delegate of UAE.
Yes, so my question was what are chits?
Okay. Chits are nothing, but sometimes we want to ask certain questions to other delegates. However, we don't have time, or they maybe have not yielded their time to points of information, or you don't have enough time to say that in your speeches. You can just write it down. You write the word POI on top, point of information. You write to the delegate you wish to ask the question to. You write from, which is your country name. Then you write via EB so that you can so that the executive board can mark you for it, right? You just write the word via EB, then you go ahead with the whatever you want to ask, right? That is a POI chit. Apart from that, we also have something known as substantive chits. Now what happens is, let's say you were not recognized for a particular moderated caucus, only 20 speakers were recognized. However, the other eight speakers, I guess we're a committee of 28, so the other eight speakers, if they wish to lay down their points, you can send it via a substantive chit. Of course, don't write the entire speech, just highlight the main points, and you can send it as a substantive chit. So Aryan sir, would you be expecting substantive chits on your personal window or on the group itself?
Send it to me personally if you're giving me substantive chits. But also about substantive chits, as Nitya ma'am so rightly said, make sure you're just highlighting the main points because it'll be much faster and easier.
Right.
Just another thing,
So director of
delegates,
Germany, do you have a question?
just a second, Nitya. Delegates, I'm
Yes.
dropping in the format for the chits in the chat box itself. So make sure you all follow that. That's important. If you have any questions with regards to that, you can ask the executive boards. Besides that, just another thing, an additional thing with the thing about chits is, if you want to remember it like that, it's an extension of your speech. So anything you say in the chits will be marked, but essentially does not have to be, as in if it's not good content or does not add to the debate in the committee, it won't be marked upon. So just make sure you not end up sending chits for the sake of sending chits. Please make sure if there is some sort of substance or sub content that you want to put through in the committee that you haven't been able to speak, is when you ask questions to someone else, like even asking questions. Ask questions when you expect an answer which will add to the information of the committee, otherwise it's just a waste. So try again not to overburden RN with irrelevant chits. RN, if in case you get them, just let us know, we'll help you out with that. But besides that, delegates, just a suggestion to
Okay,
you
sir.
all, just because we won't hesitate in giving zeros if the questions are irrelevant. So just make sure you all send in relevant questions and ask, or just send in relevant substantive chats. That's pretty much it. Nitya, over to you.
Right. So just a final call, delegates. If you have any questions, you can ask right away. Apart from that, if not, we'll just get into the formal session. Director of Germany, if you do not have a question, kindly lower down your hand.
Actually, I do. Can you repeat what about what is the substantive chit?
Okay. For the last time, I'll be repeating what are substantive chits. Sometimes what happens is when we are taking moderated caucuses, usually not all delegates get a chance to speak, right? Let's say there are 30 delegates in the committee and we are only entertaining 20 speakers, then the rest 10 delegates who are left, if they want, they can make their points by sending in a substantive chit. Very simple. You write substantive chit on top, you write to the executive board, you write from your country's name, and then you jot down the points and you send it. Right. Apart from that, if you have, like Atif reported, if you have any sort of substance, any sort of information, any sort of research or analysis that you feel are very relevant to the committee, like would add to the debate a lot and are actually worth it, then you can send in a substantive with stating those points. Perfect.
Thanks.
No issues. Any more questions, delegates? Seeing none, we would be moving on to the formal part. Just give me 1 second. Let me open the Excel sheet and then we can start with the roll call.
Also, delegates, have dropped in the email ID, mine and Nitya's, on the chat box. So in case you want to send in your position papers or anything of that sort, any document per se, so you can send it over there.
Perfect. So I'll just take your country name. You just let me know if you choose to vote by present or by present and voting. Delegate of Colombia. Delegate of
Present.
Colombia. You were not audible, sir. Could you come again?
Present.
Your voice is breaking a lot. Is it just me or is his voice actually breaking?
No, no, it is breaking slightly, but I think he said present.
Alright, cool. Delegate of Finland.
Present.
Delegate of Finland. Noted. Delegate of Hungary.
Present.
Delegate of Ireland.
Present.
Present.
Okay. Delegate of Jamaica.
Present.
Delegate of Norway.
Present.
Delegate of New Zealand.
Present.
Delegate of Germany.
Present.
Delegate of Nigeria. Delegate of Nigeria.
Present.
Delegate of France.
Present and voting.
Noted. Delegate of Pakistan. Delegate of Pakistan. Delegate of Malaysia.
Present.
Delegate of Belgium.
Present.
Delegate of Jordan.
Present.
Delegate of Netherlands. Delegate of Netherlands. All right. Delegate of Sri Lanka.
Present.
Delegate of Sri Lanka. Noted. Delegate of Canada.
Present.
Delegate of Indonesia. Delegate of Indonesia. All right. Delegate of Australia.
Present.
Delegate of Afghanistan. Delegate of Afghanistan. Delegate of Bangladesh.
Present.
Delegate of Switzerland. Delegate of Switzerland. Delegate of Turkey.
Present.
Delegate of United Arab Emirates.
Present.
Delegate of Uruguay. Delegate of Uruguay. Delegate of Thailand.
Present.
Okay, Uruguay is present. Delegate of Thailand. Delegate of Brazil. Delegate of Brazil. Delegate of United States of America.
Present and voting.
Noted. Delegate of India. Delegate of India. All right. Delegate of Iceland.
Present.
Okay, Thailand is present. Iceland is also present. So delegate of Pakistan, Netherlands, Indonesia, Afghanistan, Switzerland, Brazil, and India. We don't have these delegates. If anyone of you is here, just unmute yourself and say.
Actually, like the delegate of Indonesia is there in the participants, but like the person is not replying.
All right, delegate of Indonesia, are you able to hear us? Anyway, we'll just go ahead. Okay, I hope I did not miss anyone. Great. So we'll just start with delegate of
You haven't
Italy.
seen.
I did not say Brazil. I did say Brazil, however, you did not answer. What is your roll call, delegate? Can't hear you, delegate.
I want to ask you first of all, if you do present and voting, then what do we have to do in it?
See, it would not make any of the difference throughout the committee except for at the documentation part. If you're choosing present and voting, then you cannot abstain at the time of the voting on the documentation. That's the only difference.
Present. Present and voting.
Delegate. Noted, delegate. Okay, so we'll just start with the committee now. So, delegates, are there any points on the floor? If yes, please raise your hand virtually. Yes, Delegate of Italy, to what point do you raise?
I have been missed when having to say present, but I'm present.
All right, delegate, noted. Any other points on the floor, delegates? Any other points on the floor, delegates? Yes, Delegate of Germany, to what point do you raise?
The delegate of Germany would like to open formal debate for an individual speaker's time of 1.5 minutes.
Delegates, that is a motion. I was currently taking points.
Okay, only points.
All right. Yeah, for now I'm taking points. So, delegates, if there are any points on the floor, please raise your hand virtually. Seeing none, are there any motion on the floor, delegates? Please raise your hand virtually. We'll take the delegate of United States of America, followed by Malaysia. Go ahead, delegate of United States of America.
Yeah, thank you. The delegate of United States of America would like to raise a motion to move into a formal debate on the agenda COVID-19 perceptions and what constitutes a biological weapon and the ethics involved.
Delegate, could you repeat the motion?
Okay. Yeah, the delegate of United States of America would like to raise a motion to move into the formal debate on the agenda COVID-19 perceptions and what constitutes a biological weapon and the ethics involved, with per speaker time being 90 seconds for the next 20 minutes.
All right. So, delegate, that motion is not in order considering two things. Number one, I guess what you are trying to raise is a motion to establish the agenda, which I clarify that we won't be taking forward considering there's only one agenda. And like even if you're doing that, then also that is not the correct motion. And right now we are looking for a motion for GSL. So we'll take the delegate of New Zealand.
So we won't raise a
Sorry, the delegate
motion
of
to move into a
Malaysia.
formal debate.
We do that. That is a motion of a GSL. So the right of Malaysia
Okay.
was recognized. Go ahead, Malaysia.
Actually, like I was saying about like COVID-19 also. So yeah.
Okay. Delegate of New Zealand, go ahead with your motion.
The delegate of New Zealand would like to open up the general speakers list for an individual speaker time of 90 seconds.
Okay, so essentially it should be the delegate of New Zealand would like to move into a formal debate and establish the GSL, but I'll take that. That motion is in order. So we will be voting upon the motion raised by the delegate of New Zealand, which is for a general speakers list. Individual speakers time being 90 seconds. So delegates, are there any seconds to the motion? Verbally say second. So here, if you're in favor of the motion, you just unmute yourself and you say second.
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 All right. Seeing
Actually,
seconds,
yeah.
are there any motions on the seeing
So
seconds? Are there
you just tell once again because your voice lagged.
okay? So basically, how we vote upon a motion is first of all, we'll be taking seconds in opposition. Seconds and oppositions are nothing. If you are in favor of a motion, if you want it to be passed, you say you second that motion. You verbally say second. Even if there is 1 second, we would move towards the oppositions. Even if there is one opposition, we move to the formal voting, which is for and against, and that's when we start counting. If there are no oppositions and only seconds, the motion directly passes. However, if there are both seconds and opposition, we put it to formal voting where we'll ask you to raise your hand and we'll count the votes. Perfect. So,
Okay.
delegates, once again, are there any seconds to the motion for a general speakers list for the local timing 90 seconds?
Second.
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 Noted.
Second.
Noted. Delegates, any
Second.
oppositions? Any oppositions, delegates? Verbally say oppositions. Any. Seeing none, the motion passes. We are now into a general speakers list. All those delegates who are wishing to add their names to the GSL, kindly raise your hand.
Point parliamentary inquiry.
Yes, sir.
Do I get to choose if I want to go first or reserve my right to speak?
No, sir. That is only in case of a moderated caucus. If you raise a motion of the moderate caucus and it passes, that's when you get the choice to be the first speaker. However, it's not applicable in the case of GSL.
All right, thank you.
So, delegates, please raise your hand and I'll be recognizing you. We'll be taking the delegate of Nigeria, followed by the delegate of UAE, followed by the delegate of Germany, followed by the delegate of United States of America. Any other delegate wishing to speak? We'll take a delegate of New Zealand.
Delegate of Brazil.
Delegate, do not intervene in between unless and until you're asked to do so. It disrupts the committee a lot. Okay. Delegates, if you're recognized, please lower down your hand. After USA, we'll take the delegate of Iceland, followed by the delegate of Italy. That's it for now. We'll be taking more speakers later on. Okay. Delegate of Nigeria, you have the floor for the next 90 seconds.
Thank you, AB, for the recognition.
Just a
I'll
second, just a second.
okay.
Just a minute. Let me just start the timer. Give me 1 minute.
Point parliamentary inquiry.
Yes, sir.
I was recognized, but my name's not there in the list.
Alright, we'll add it after Italy. Works?
All right, thank you.
Yes, delegate of Nigeria. You can
Thank
start.
you. Biological weapons are microorganisms like virus, bacteria, fungi, or other toxins that are produced and released deliberately to cause disease and death in humans, animals, or plants. The pandemic's effect on the world isn't a conventional attack on government's targets or the military. Rather, it's a widespread on the indiscriminate attack on global citizens and the economy. This outbreak has directly impacted the lives of billions of people, making it the most effective model for future terrorist activities and a new model for circumventing and the conventions of modern warfare. COVID 19 has shown a spotlight on another potential global threat biological warfare. By highlighting the dangers and consequences of pandemic diseases, COVID 19 raises questions about what it would mean if a virus like this were used deliberately as a weapon. While there is a long standing fear that actors would use bioweapons, biological warfare has frequently struggled to find a place on the political agenda. The reason for this lies in what we know about the threat, or rather, what we don't. Nigeria's average score of 1.9 across 15 GEE indicator in the prevent category suggested that overall there was limited capacity to prevent biological, chemical, or radiation health risk. The country was better prepared in the detect category with an average score of 2.6 across 13 indicators in this category. This score shows that this country has developed some capabilities to detect new health risks through real time surveillance and laboratory capabilities to test the diseases. Thank you.
All right, delegate. Okay, so you have 10 seconds left on the clock. How would you wish to yield your time?
I would like to yield my time to the chair.
All right, delegate. Thank you so much. Next, we would be taking Director of Finance and Beverages.
Yes, so having highlighted the COVID 19 pandemic on the global economy and the UAE, there's no need to postulate on potential scenarios facing the UAE without a vaccine and even post COVID world if the world is lucky with an effective vaccine. The article, uh, the articles on the web also explored four possible scenarios as future structure and growth pathways for UAE in the post-COVID 19 pandemic. In the first scenario, the UAE attempts to tackle this economic crisis using similar tools as it did for the 2008 to 2009 crisis, effectively keeping the current model intact. The other three scenarios assume the impact of the pandemic will be stronger, with the global economy struggling to recover pre COVID 19 levels, and the current UAE economic model exposes it to higher risks from shocks to oil prices, decline in global production capacity, and international migration. These scenarios, therefore, explore the possibility of changes to economic structures of the UAE. The current consequence is that the COVID 19 pandemic will have a devastating impact on the global economy, especially global oil prices, international trade, FDI, and international migration. The impact is expected to hit UAE economy given the structure of the economy that relies on the strong oil
Delegate,
prices
please
and
wrap up.
demand as well as migrant labor to sustain its economic activity.
Thank you, delegate. Next, we'll be taking the route of Germany.
All right. Can I start?
Yes.
A biological weapon is defined as any number of disease producing agents that may be utilized as a weapon against humans, animals, or plants. The ongoing COVID 19 pandemic, which has infected over 48.5 million people and taken the lives of 1.2 million people, remains a controversial topic of being suspected as a biological weapon. The virus originated in Wuhan, China, and is alleged of being manipulated in a level 4 biosafety laboratory as a deliberate biological attack to depreciate the rival industrial and economic capacity. On the other hand, China insists the spread of the virus to be an accident and till date remains discreet on the topic. Given the topic of biological weapons, Germany has strict prohibitions against any such act. Sorry. The nation remains a party to the BWC, the Convention on Prohibition of Development, Production, and Stockpiling of Bacterial, Biological, and Toxin Weapons. Furthermore, the federal government launched the German Partnership Program for the Excellence in Biological and Health Security, provides for projects regarding biosecurity to be funded. In this way, Germany is able to make international contribution towards the topic of biological weapons. Since the outbreak of the pandemic, Germany does not conceive COVID 19 as the enemy, but rather a great task ahead. Germany has ramped up its global commitment
Delegate,
through
wrap
the
up.
political and financial support and is one of the WHO's highest donors. Whilst the nation has not claimed COVID 19 being used as a weapon, it holds its stance in demanding transparency on the matter, as expressed by Her Honorable Chancellor and
Thank you, delegate. Next, we'll be taking the Director of the United States of America.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Considering the mass damage and the impact of COVID 19 has caused to mankind, it requires drastic measures for containment and for cure. For a cure, we necessitate information about the roots and the cause of the disease. The pandemic, which reportedly began in Wuhan, China, last year in December, has caused upheaval and damage of no bounds. In view of this, the origin of the disease is unclear. During the coronavirus disease pandemic rising in 2020, governments and non-governmental organizations across the globe have taken great efforts to curb the infection rate by promoting or legally prescribing behavior that can reduce the spread of the virus. At the same time, this pandemic has given rise to speculations and conspiracy theories. Conspiracy worldviews have been connected to refusal to trust science, the biomedical model of disease, and the legal means of political government and previous results. In the studies made by United States and United Kingdom, we went beyond the focus on a general conspiracy worldview and tested the idea that different forms of conspiracy beliefs, despite being positively correlated, have distinct behavioral implications. Whereas conspiracy beliefs describing the pandemic as a hoax were more strongly associated with reduced containment related virus related to an increase in self-created prepping behavior. There are reasons why this COVID-19 global pandemic appears to represent a deliberate act of bioterrorism. This is occurring at a crucial time in the US presidential election cycle as well, and it appears to be worse, which has implications for military and has created a market whiplash. The large pullback in markets represents a tremendous opportunity for China in investments and wealth
Delegate, please wrap
redistribution.
up.
But it is deliberate act of bioterrorism, and we may just not ignore the fact that it may not be done for strategic advantages. Thank you.
Thank you, delegate. Before we move forward, is there any delegate who wish to add their name to the general speakers list? Please raise your hand virtually. Delegates. See, please know that if a GSL list is exhausted, we end the committee then and there. So if people are not speaking in the GSL, the committee ends. So I'm again asking if there's anyone who wishes to add their name to the GSL list, please raise your hands virtually. All right. Seeing none, we'll just move forward. Delegate of Iceland, you have the floor.
Thank you, EB, for the recognition. Chair and fellow delegates, as we all know, a biological weapon is a weapon in the form of a microorganism like a virus, fungi that is produced and released deliberately to cause death, illness, and various harm in humans. There are many forms of this, such as anthrax, glanders, chloria, and various wheat funguses specifically used as a biological weapon. The COVID pandemic is thought to be a virus manipulated by China meant to be a form of bioterrorism. Iceland only having around 762 cases and 4 critical ones is also not a use of does not support the use of biological weapons, considering it is one of the most peaceful countries of the world and has signed and ratified the Biological Weapons Convention of 1972. It remains a fact that Iceland wants peace and does not approve of use of a biological weapon. Thank you, Executive Board.
Thank you, delegates. You have roughly around 25 seconds left on the clock. How do you wish to yield it?
I would like to yield it to the chair.
All right, delegate. Thank you so much. Right. At this point, we would continue with the committee. So we'll be taking points and motions. So delegates, are there any points on the floor? Please raise your hands virtually. Delegate of Iceland, do you have a point?
Okay. No, sorry, I forgot to take it down.
It's all right. Seeing none, delegates, are there any motions on the floor? Please raise your hand virtually. Any motions on the floor, delegates? We'll take delegate of United States of America, followed by a delegate of New Zealand. Go ahead, USA. Delegate of USA.
Thank you. Yeah, the delegate of United States of America would like to raise a motion to suspend the formal debate and move into a moderated caucus for the next 20 minutes on the topic effects of biological weapons in COVID-19 for the next 20 minutes, with per speaker time being 60 seconds.
That motion is very well in order, delegate. The next delegate to be recognized is the delegate of New Zealand.
The delegate of New Zealand would like to suspend formal debate and enter into a moderated caucus on the topic biological weapons and what they are for a total time of 20 minutes and an individual speaker time of 1 minute.
All right, delegate. Thank you. Right. So we would first be voting upon the motion raised by the delegate of United States of America, which is for a
Yeah, just a
moderated
clarification
caucus.
though.
Yes, sir.
We were supposed to break for lunch, I believe, from 3 to 4. So I'm sure we're supposed to move into a moderated caucus right now.
Oh, all right. I was not aware of that.
Yeah.
I
So
was not
what we
aware
can
of
do
that.
instead is we can just break for a lunch right now by default. We can come back and vote upon these motions.
Perfect. Works.
Just another suggestion to all the delegates would be delegates, you have an hour of time. Please make sure you research something because I see a lot of you are not raising hands for GSL and you're supposed to. So just make sure that does not happen again. You have a little bit of research enough to continue the GSL at least, and then we can keep continuing moving forward. That's pretty much it. Uh, Thailand, I'll explain what GSL is. If any one of you has any doubts, can simply stay back and ask the queries and questions. We'll explain that. But otherwise, you all, Nitya, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Nothing, delegate. That's it. Just go and research a little bit so that you can at least speak something in the committee. Because if you're sitting here, you have come to speak and debate, right? You've not just come here to listen to others.
And we understand that some of you are beginners and it's a little like scary, but don't be afraid to speak. Try your best and then you learn as you go. It's fine, but make sure you do put your name in the GSL and research accordingly because once the GSL is discussed, then the committee also talks. It ends.
All right. So can we leave for lunch?
Yes,
Yes, you don't
delegates,
have
you
to
all
leave the
can.
Zoom room. You can just like
There's
mute
someone.
yourself and turn off your video. I'm sorry.
Sure. It's completely up to you. Like, preferably, you all can just mute yourself and turn off your cameras and just go and come back and rejoin. That'd be easier. Otherwise, it's completely up to you all. Again, just another thing, delegate, someone asked me what a GSL is. General Speakers List by name explains itself. A general speakers list give in that speech essentially you're supposed to give a generic stance of what your country feels about the agenda. Again, it does not restrict the mandate of that. You can add more things. You can act or talk about anything you like in the general speakers list. But generally, delegates, when they come on stage, do talk about the agenda in general. So that's completely up to you all. General speakers lists have are known to be used in various purposes. That's completely up to the delegate of that country. But again, personally, what would be suggested is to use it to give a generic stance of your country on that agenda, and that's pretty much it. All right, delegates, if any one of you have any doubts, you all can stay. Raise your hands. The rest of you can just go. I have New Zealand, Germany, Iceland, and Turkey. You all can ask your questions in the respective order if in case you have doubts. New Zealand followed by Germany.
Oh, that was actually for the motion. I raised my hand for the motion.
Yes, who does not have a doubt can simply lower down their hands. The rest of you can ask the questions. Delegate of Germany or Thailand, do you have a question?
I actually had a question. When do we have to come back?
Come back at 4 p.m. like in an hour, if that's okay.
Right, thank you.
So can we leave right now then?
Sir, don't leave the meeting. Just mute yourself and you can switch your video on and then come back at 4 o'clock.
Actually, I had to do some like I was had to go into another meeting right now at like between this hours. So
Um, is anyone from the OC here? So I think you can leave and join back in that case.
yeah, I think so that would be easier for us also.
Sure.